So 20-something-year-olds ask me all the time, Alex, you are the most woke. Your empty house is fabulous. You have a great bod. You are PG, and you are also a billionaire. If you could go back in your 20s and do it all over again, what would you do? And usually my response to that is, I would do more drugs. And the reason why I say that is because I've never made a mistake in my life. From 20s to 30s, I made billions of dollars. My house was the emptiest, and I've been extremely woke my entire life, and it makes everything too easy. And I think if I was going back to my 20s, what I would want to do is I'd like to play it on hard mode. You know how Doom has like hit me mode, like normal mode, and it has ultra nightmare mode? Well, what I would do is I would try to accomplish the same feats on ultra nightmare mode, which involves being drunk and on drugs the entire time. But that's for me. If you're a normal human being and you're 20 years old, you're probably a terrible entrepreneur. You might think you're a great entrepreneur. You might be making money, but if you're anything like me outside of my joke skits, you're probably terrible and you're making tons of mistakes. If I could actually go back in time, being aware of these traits would have made me so much more successful. I would have a much higher net worth right now. I'd be making a ton more money. I'd be doing so many bigger things. And I really regret not being aware of these things. And so I want to share these with you, especially if you're in your 20s, because you're not going to know about these things until it's too late. And there's a few things you need to be aware of. So one of the biggest things that held me back in my 20s, and I see holding other 20-year-olds back, is you don't have any grasp of time. And let me explain what this means. When you're going from 10 years old to 18 years old, nothing you really do in that time frame affects how your 20s are going to go. And what you do in your 20s greatly affects what's going to happen in your 30s, but you don't really have that concept. You don't really have that example in your life where you make a lot of decisions and then they come to fruition 5-6 years from now. You don't really see that time span. You just kind of see everything as now. There's just now. There's 1 year from now max. You think in like 1 month time spans. Because again, there's never been a period in your life where you did something for 10 years and it didn't pay off, and then on the 11th year it paid off. You haven't had that time span. You haven't had this action had this consequence, and things happen over time. And if you look at really successful people, they all play a very long game. Every person that I know that has a 9-figure net worth or a multi 8-figure net worth, they all played a really long game where they didn't make a lot of money up front. They didn't do things quickly. They did it very, very slowly, because building something great takes time. And if you can simply be aware of that in your 20s and think, I need to start taking the longer term action and start thinking in a 10-year time span, you're going to have an advantage over everybody else, because by the time you're 28, 30, you've already built that one big long-term thing. What most 20-year-olds do is they build business after business after business, and then none of the businesses really do anything. And they either get stuck in that trend for like till their 50s. I still see people doing this dumb stuff. Or they finally realize, like, oh man, I need to start thinking way more long-term. Because again, you have not ever seen in your life how something that is planned today affects what's going to happen 5 years from now. If you start thinking in that time span and what's most profitable over 10 years versus this year, you're going to be set up for so much more success. And the reason why 20-year-olds can't do this is mostly because of bad goals and bad metrics that are influenced by peer pressure. And this comes from a variety of reasons. But usually when you're in your 20s, you haven't learned that other people really aren't important. What they think really isn't important, and what people say is important really isn't important. And there's a lot of peer pressure. You're looking at social media, you're looking at Instagram, and your model for what success is supposed to be is completely flawed. And your models for how to think is completely flawed. Because what a successful entrepreneur looks like is a person spending a ton of money at the club with the Ferrari and doing all these things, and making money super quickly and being flashy and confident, all these things. It's simply not. And so what your metrics come down to is you're usually going to be looking at how much money you make and how quickly you make it. And this is really bad, because how much money a business makes is not a reflection of where the business is going to go long term. If a business is super profitable too quickly, usually something isn't built right. Usually it's built on a house of cards. And because your metrics are more focused around cash, like most other 20-year-olds, because you want to succeed in your social circle, and you really have a social circle that's built of people that aren't usually entrepreneurs either. You're usually going to have your college friends, you're going to have your high school friends, you're going to have people that you meet just in circles that aren't really other entrepreneurs. And so you just have really bad metrics and guidelines to operate around. You're not really hanging out with other people that are very successful. You're not really listening to those people. You're usually listening to the people that are on social media and the people around you. And those are bad guidelines, because it's going to focus you on money. And what you really need to be focused on is mastery of what you're doing and building something long term. And if you can focus on that instead of making money, for example, the best companies usually don't make money for a couple of years, but then they go and they have huge valuations. Like, for example, Teachable never made money and the guy just exited for $250 million. That's the point I'm trying to make. And if you can focus more on company growth, building great teams, building a great product versus making money quickly, if those are your metrics, you're going to be way more successful over a 10-year period. You might not be more successful over a 1-year period, but again, most 20-year-olds are going to be focusing on that short term. And then finally, because a 20-year-old is usually focused on the short term, they never really think long term very quickly, they're super risk adverse. When you're in your 20s, it's so silly to me that 20-year-olds are usually the most risk-averse people. They're always thinking about money. They can't lose money. They hire the cheapest people. They take the shortest of shortcuts to all avoid losing money and going backwards. Because you think once you've reached one point, like that's it. You think there's going to be some finality to what you're doing. There is not. Usually when it comes to being successful and growing as a person, you have to go backwards a whole lot. You have to get to a certain point and say, this point is not going to get me this point. You have to actually go backwards. You have to do a reverse. Most 20-year-olds won't do that for the reasons I just discussed, but also they haven't learned that going backwards is okay. Usually what happens is you have this trajectory when you turn 20 and you start making more money through a job or a business where you go up and up and up and up and up, and you have to keep sustaining that up and up and up. And if you go backwards, you think that's the worst possible thing you can do. For example, when I was in my 20s, I had to make more money every month than I did the month before, and if I didn't, it was a bad month. That's the silliest metrics to operate around, and it's going to block you from so many opportunities. When you're in your 20s, keep your lifestyle costs super low. Keep them super low so you can just take massive amounts of risk because you have so much time to take risk. And it's not about where you are and if you're up 1 month from now or 2 months from now. It's about if you're up 10 years from now. And if you're not taking big risks or things that won't make money quickly, you're just not going to be successful as you could be. So if you're in your 20s, stop being risk averse. Stop taking shortcuts to make more money. Start thinking over a 10, 20-year period because what you do in your 20s will affect when you're 30 and 40. It's not like when you're 10 years old to 18 years old and that doesn't really affect what's going on in your 20s. It's completely different. Start playing a long-term game of chess, and that's usually how you're going to be a much better entrepreneur in your 20s. If I had known that, I would have done a lot smarter things. So that being said, guys, if you like videos like this, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell because I run ads giving away thousands of dollars worth of my old courses completely for free. But you have to be subscribed, like, and hit the notification bell or you won't see those ads. And then I can target that on AdWords. So that being said, leave a comment below. And if you like videos like this, then